Welcome back to another episode of Questions with Crocker. We are going ahead. We are, during the day, trying to podcast at home with our children here. So it might be a complete disaster, but you've been sick. We haven't been able to do it for a couple days. So we're trying to catch up and get a couple episodes done. How you feeling now?
Good. There's a good chance that we're going to have to stop this 47 times. So.
The dog already reacted to the FedEx truck once. He's very protective of those trucks. And so we luckily hadn't started yet, but we'll see what happens.
And he just threw up. So
he did just throw up. I don't know why. Maybe it's the grease that he licked a little bit of last night, which, did you know the concern would be pancreatitis? The high fat in the grease.
I don't know what pancreatitis is, so no.
Okay, so quick medical info. The pancreas sits by the stomach and the liver, and if you eat something really fatty, or if dogs eat like people food and they're not supposed to, it gets angry. And when it gets angry, because it's right by the stomach, it will actually cause dogs to vomit, a large percentage of dogs, or they won't feel good and they won't eat well. So I'm honestly hoping that's the issue, because that's just like a medical fix that I can treat. Probably outpatient here at home. However, if it's that he ate something, which he also has a tendency to do, then he looks so innocent right now, but that could be something that is a lot more serious overall. So we'll see. Hopefully we can treat it medically and we're okay.
There's really no telling.
So don't let your dogs eat people food, fatty food, or lick up grease, because pancreatitis can be really serious. That is our take-home message, medical message of the day. Speaking of things we want you to know about, we are an emergency veterinarian, practice owner.
We are not an emergency veterinarian.
I am Dr. Crocker, an emergency veterinarian. You are my husband, Shane, and you're an entrepreneur. We own a general practice together. And we do this podcast because we really want people to have their questions answered about what we deal with as practice owners, what I see as a veterinarian. And so it's been really fun. And we have a really good question today. I think you are going to talk a lot more than me, because it's definitely more of a business-oriented question, but I'm interested to hear what all you have to say. So for those of you that really want to know more about what it takes to run a practice and what the business side of things looks like, this is definitely one of the episodes for you. But before we get into that, want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So I do travel for work and I speak, and school's about to start, vet school, which means I'll be traveling more. How you feeling about that?
I thought you meant school's about to start, so our kids will be
not home
as much.
That also. Our kids are about to start back in school, and you work from home. Mm-hmm. That's one of the perks of being an entrepreneur. Actually, let me ask you, what are some tips that you want to give people who want to be a work from home person? How do you do it? Because I feel like you do a really good job of getting your work done. So how do you do that? How do you manage that?
I think you have to be disciplined a little bit, not necessarily get up, put a suit on, and go sit behind your desk 8 to 5, but you have to understand what needs to be done,
right,
and prioritize those activities. So I think everybody has to find their own way of doing that. I put everything on my phone, and I basically have a checklist of things that I know need to be completed today. And if I don't get to them, they get pushed to the next day, etc. So I basically sit up there and work off my phone and make sure I cover the activities that need to be done. And then a lot of things kind of fall or happen throughout the day that I have to, mix into it. But basically I have my checklist I make sure that I complete on a daily basis.
I mean, when you say you put everything in your phone, you put like
everything
in your phone.
Yeah, if somebody sends an email, says, hey, I need this done, then it goes to my phone. So even if I do it right then, I still put it on my phone so I can show that I actually accomplished that for the day.
And I can't share that calendar with you. It's overwhelming to me, everything that's on your phone. But you do a good job of addressing what you can, and then you just move stuff over to the next day that you didn't address that day. So it's like a running to-do list, which actually is really smart. But when I look at my calendar, it would overwhelm me to see all those things. I also think it helps that our kids are at an age that they're a lot more independent. They can make their own food. It is limited in the nutritional value and quality.
Corbin had cereal today for lunch, but I was in the middle of
there you go. It's
doing
summer
something
though.
That I couldn't stop. So
it's summer, and we are kind of in survival mode. We have 2 more weeks, and then they'll be back in school. We can get back in a little bit of a routine. But it's been a fun summer because I just think they're at an age that they're a little easier, and we can go and run and do things a little bit more as a family And that has been really, really nice. And I have not traveled as much this summer intentionally. And that also has been really good, I think, for us as a whole. So
I would agree.
My goal, and I'm just saying this on the podcast so like I can be held accountable, is I'm actually going to reduce the amount of trips I have this next year a little bit, and be really intentional about what conferences I do attend, how long I'm there, and really try to make
Quality over quantity.
Quality over quantity. I love it. So I'm going to lean heavily into some of the conferences that I speak at a lot more, and I'm going to interact with people that I really need to business-wise, and then try not to just attend conferences just because I really like to. And I think that that's going to be good for me and for you. I love to travel. I'm one of those people that does not mind flying on airplanes, sleeping in hotels, but it did get a little tiring this last year, I'll be honest. And so we're going to try to cut that down a little bit. Does that make you happy?
Yes.
Good. So I put it out there in the world. So now everyone will have to help
hold you accountable.
Hold me accountable to it. Yes. So you will be seeing me at some of the vet schools coming up. As I find out about them, I will be announcing it on here when I can. I know I'll be at Long Island. No, not Long Island. Lincoln Memorial. Sorry. There's a lot of L vet schools. Lincoln Memorial coming up in Tennessee at the end of August. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm going to talk about communication in the ER. And so that's something I really enjoy talking about. So if you guys are there at Lincoln Memorial, you can check me out. But are you ready to get into this question that we have?
What is it?
So it's actually from one of our good friends that we love, at Dr. Sydney DVM. She's amazing. She's an exotics veterinarian. You should follow her on social media. But she's looking to open a practice of her own in California. So we've had a lot of discussions about like opening a practice. Man, it's tough. Real estate in California is really tough. And so her finding a spot has been tricky, but she's really dedicated to it and really wants to like help out the exotic owners there. And the idea of what she's going to do with her practice, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to really be awesome is there. But it's actually a multi-part question. I think we're just going to hit the first part this time around because I feel like you're going to have a fair amount to say about this. So they wanted us to have a discussion on running a successful practice with good profitability and still paying your staff a living wage and appropriate benefits. So I think that is a good thing to discuss because it's honestly been something that we have discussed a lot. So do you want to start us off about just the philosophy that we have around like profitability and staff and benefits? You want to go first?
I can go first. So I think to start with, we know that you have to put together a really good team. And to put together a really good team is going to cost you.
Yes.
And you're going to have to add benefits, which we are actively in the middle of doing. That is not a very fun process, and it's a very expensive endeavor, but it's something that has to be done. If you can put together a good team and you can pay them well, and you can provide them with the benefits, profitability is probably going to follow that. How we measure profitability is really through our KPIs. I know we talked about KPIs at one point, maybe at a high level, but we kind of came up with 15 or so KPIs that we manage on a monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, annual basis. And that helps us kind of manage and look at the things we want to look at frequently.
Okay, so let's just back up for a minute. For people who are new to kind of the business side of veterinary medicine practice ownership, what is a KPI? What does that stand for?
It's a key performance indicator, basically.
And I did not know this when we started out, so I had to learn along the way also.
And I think it's a way to be intentional about managing data, right? So there's certain things that we want to look at through year one. This could be a moving target. It may change going into year two because there may be other things we need to concentrate on, but it allows us to be intentional with looking at data to understand what's going on within the four walls of our hospital.
Yes, because we have talked about this in the past. I have worked in a lot of practices, and I think you have bought a lot of businesses that people were working off the feeling that they were profitable. Because they could pay the bills and pay everyone. But they didn't actually know where they sat based on like industry standards and what they were spending versus what they were making. And so to us, we wanted to make it a little more logical and black and white when we were looking at these things and not just emotional. Now, on the emotional side of things, when we started this process, we had a lot of discussions about benefits because I said off the bat, it is hard to hire right now in veterinary medicine. And I already knew people I wanted to bring on board. And I knew those people needed health insurance and needed all the things that this practice wasn't already offering. And so looking at how could we be profitable enough that we could do all those benefits that really at this point should be standard in our industry, and they're not always, but also pay people, I think, more than what the industry does. And so that's been a long conversation. We've owned it for a year, and we are honestly just getting to instituting health insurance benefits. It has been a process, like you said, for 2 months, and very painful one. And I've learned a lot about health insurance, more than I actually want to know. And we've had some people help us out that were really smart and great. And there are so many options out there. We'll have to have a whole nother podcast about that and how you can structure that as like a small business owner in veterinary medicine. But lucky to say we have worked something out, and it has actually, very excited, allowed us to hire another veterinarian who will be coming on. And we also hired another technician recently who's amazing. So growing our team, making it stronger skill set wise, which in turn has allowed us to make more money because we can see
I don't
more
think we
cases.
realize more money yet, but we do anticipate that that's coming.
No, we have more people. So we've been able to say yes more. We've been able to take more of those same day emergencies and, see more surgeries. And so I think it's going to make us more money, but I guess we will see.
The KPIs will tell us.
The KPIs will tell us, yes. So yes, we have monthly meetings, manager leadership meetings where we look at the KPIs. Tell us, where did you get your standards? So we look at percentages. Where did you get those from?
Yeah, so we started with kind of our list of things, right? And then we found that there are certain benchmarks that we can use. And that's better than me just saying, hey, I think our cost of goods sold should be here, right? So there's definitely different benchmarks. AHA has different benchmarks. DataLink, I think there's AVMA, has some toolboxes, et cetera. So there's definitely several places you can go to find these benchmarks. Ours may actually be a year or two old, but it still gives us a good idea of where we need to be and certain things that we need to shoot for.
Well, it lets us track our progress, right?
Yes.
So if we have the same benchmarks that we use for a while, like over a year, we can see, okay, if this is what we're using, are we high, are we low, are we staying where we want to be? And then we can adjust as necessary. I also know we are a member of PSI and there's VMG, which are both big buying groups and help with business. And they also have actually services where you can send them stuff and they will help you look at all this data also, or they have benchmarks that they can share with you. So there is a lot of information out there if you really want to dial down and look at not just your gross and your net income and what expenses you have, but like really suss out the different aspects of that and not just an overall picture.
Yeah, what you're trying to do is look for trends as well. So if we look at this on a monthly basis, it may not tell the full story because something may happen during that month.
Right.
But when you're looking at several months together, a quarter, semi-annual, you can start to see trends. We noticed, as an example for our practice, cost of goods sold, the benchmark should be around 20 to 26%. We're running about 27%. And we've known for several months that we've kind of trended on the higher level of the cost. And that starts telling us a story. There's two things that could contribute to that, right? Either one, we're not buying stuff cheap enough, or two, we're not selling stuff expensive enough, right? So we feel like once we've done our research that our buying power is not as good as a large corporate organization.
Yes.
But we're still buying stuff at a fairly decent price. So that to me tells me there's areas where we need to look at potentially raising prices to get within the threshold where we need to be that will then push money down to the bottom line.
And I do think that it's important to maybe just do an overview of like the categories that we have chosen to look at and the trends we've noticed with our practice. And so if you want to start with kind of just pretend we're in our meeting and you're giving us the financial rundown and the things that we
usually use a lot of profanity in our meetings.
No, I will say we always base the meeting around food And so feeding people when they have to talk about money is helpful, whether it's breakfast or lunch. That has been good. No alcohol is involved, just food.
When we leave there, alcohol is definitely
involved. Sometimes.
Yeah. So what I do is I pull data out of our system, either our practice management system, our QuickBooks that we house our financial data in, and I build out everything in a spreadsheet. There's probably better ways to do this, but this is how I do it. So one of the things that I look at on a monthly basis.
Can I just say you're really good with a spreadsheet?
I like spreadsheets.
Like I don't want to not give you props.
I don't want to downplay my
for your skills.
Abilities.
Yeah, spreadsheet skills are strong.
So what I do is I look at revenue, and I break the revenue down by subcategories. So we look at our exam fees, in-house lab, external lab, surgeries, pharmacy, et cetera. So we have basically a breakdown of all the different subcategories that make up our total revenue number. And I want to see kind of where we're driving our revenue from. The next thing we look at is basically revenue by provider. So on a per ticket basis, what are our veterinarians driving on a ticket? And I think that's important because it's going to tell a story. We're not looking for who's necessarily getting the most revenue, but if there's a large discrepancy between vet A and vet B, why is that? Right? Is somebody maybe doing too much, right? And stuff that maybe they don't need to do? Or is the other vet maybe not doing enough or not asking the right questions? So that's just something we track and try to figure out, what's the average per appointment dollar by technician or by veterinarian.
I will tell you, I think it's important to have a practice that is honest about that because one, also when you get newer veterinarians or younger veterinarians to the practice, it's nice to be able to say, this is what our veterinarians that are kind of a part of the system and know the flow have been doing for a while. And for me, when I joined my last practice, I always knew what it was and knew, okay, I'm doing dental surgeries, appointments, the same thing they're all doing. So if mine is a little lower, what am I not getting compliance on from clients? What can I work on communicating a little bit better? Like your clientele overall is going to kind of be trained to say yes to certain things. And so it helps you look and see compared to the other doctors, what am I doing or not doing? Now, sometimes that number is going to be dramatically different because you might have someone who does more surgeries or does more drop-offs and emergencies. And so that's why you don't always compare them apples to apples. You have to kind of know what goes into that number. But for me, as a new, younger veterinarian, it's actually a really helpful tool to look and say, okay, am I the same, close, or am I higher? And what is my goal going to be if I see these certain people earning this in this practice? I should be able to do that too. And so it was a helpful tool for me just growing in my communication skills overall.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is communication, like you said. So some of the stuff that we look at is, I talked about our cost of goods sold. I want to know, what are we paying for product? We take a look at our total payroll as a percent of our revenue. So we look at overall payroll and where it falls within benchmarks. And then we also look at our support staff pay and our veterinary pay. And again, we look at within benchmarks. We may find that our overall pay is low compared to the industry. Maybe our technician staff is getting paid higher than industry, but our veterinarians are getting paid less, right? So we want to make adjustments to both of those so that we're getting within the range where we need to be.
And that was something that we did early on, really helped us a lot because we did find that payroll was a lot more than the industry standard when it came to support staff. And so looking at, okay, who was getting paid what were they contributing to the practice? Could we get more out of certain people? Were some people, honestly, some people were underpaid based on their skill set. And so could we look at those people and give them a bump? But I do think that was one of the biggest numbers in the beginning that shed a lot of light on the profitability of the practice. Because if you have people in the practice that are getting paid a very large salary and they are not contributing that amount, your practice is less profitable in general. And so that helped us make a lot of decisions really early on.
Yeah, and I'd also say that with our technical staff, we were able to look and say, okay, let's build out models where the technicians fall within 3 or 4 categories. And if they hit certain benchmarks, they get bumped to another pay bracket, if you will. So I think some of this data helped us figure out how can we pay technicians based on their skill set, and make sure they're getting paid appropriately for that.
Well, and that transparency helps technicians understand when they come on board, where are they at, and really what do they need to do to be able to bump up to the next bracket. And there's some people that, contribute in other ways than just their technical skill set with management and with leadership type roles. And so it's not completely, black and white always, but there's sure a lot of value in being able to show somebody, this is our tiered technicians, and these are the ranges, and this is where you are, and this is where you can be. These are the things you need to work on.
Absolutely.
And it takes away that feeling of, I've known this person forever, I just need to pay them more, right? Yep. You can actually have something very tangible, and they can too, to see where everyone is and kind of have goals based around that.
Yep. One of the things we look at is rent. This is probably one that will fall off going into year 2. Mainly because we put this in here initially, we own the real estate.
Right.
The real estate's held in a separate entity. So we basically pay a rent to the separate entity.
Right.
We needed to figure out what is a realistic rent that we should be paying, right? What is the industry standard that should be paying in rent today? We've got that narrowed down. That's not going to really change. So we'll probably quit looking at that going into year 2, and that's just when we can pull off our list. We look at gross margin. And where it should fall within benchmarks. We look at our net income, so the dollar that falls to the bottom line. Where does that fall within certain benchmark ranges? We also look at a break-even point. So we break it down to a daily break-even, so that we know if we do X for the day, we're going to at least pay our bills, right? So break-even is important for us to kind of monitor, so we know what our break-even is on a monthly basis. We know how much we make per day on a monthly basis. And then we also look at what is the break even with a return on investment. So we use a 20% return on our investment.
Which is a standard. For owning a business.
Yeah, and if you want to look at, and it's probably a little bit low to be honest with you because you're taking more risk inside of a business. But the thought would be if I'm investing money into this business, I want to make sure I'm getting a return on my investment.
Right.
So we're looking at what is that break even on a daily basis with a 20% ROI. Where does that fall on a daily basis for us?
And we are also looking at what we would pay, obviously what we're paying our veterinarians now, but what we would pay me if I was getting paid.
Yes.
So we're calculating that in, even though I don't technically take a salary at this point.
Yeah, right. And that's a good point. So right now what we're trying to do is put a lot of money back into the practice,
yes,
upgrading the equipment, upgrading the technology, upgrading the building. And we're able to do that based off of your, skin equity, if you will.
Yeah.
So the days that you work, the revenue that you drive, we measure that in our economic data points, our spreadsheets, but we're not actually pulling that money out of here.
Well, and it also helps us too. We want to calculate that because when we're looking at bringing on another veterinarian, do we have the work for them? Can we afford to pay them? And so we do because we're busy. And that is one number you didn't mention, but we look at how many new clients. Yeah,
I was going to go into some of the non-revenue data points, and one of those is new clients. So I think the industry standard or kind of the goal that you shoot for is 20 new clients a month. We're blowing through that.
Yeah.
I think we're running 50 new clients a month on average. But that is something we look at. We also look at our Google reviews. So we want to know how many 4-star plus Google reviews are we getting on a monthly basis.
Which we've been doing an amazing job at that.
Great job. And I think a lot of that is just asking the question. Hey, we really enjoy you being here today. If you enjoyed your service, if you could go online and give us a positive review, we'd really appreciate it. Well, and then the other thing you did is we added QR codes kind of around the hospital and then also to the bottom of invoices. And so when that's printed, people can just do the QR codes straight to Google reviews, which is really, really helpful also. So it's been fun. And we got so many recently that I was like, the team is amazing. I always send them to everybody and show them the shout outs. But we ended up getting gift cards for everybody and just taking them up there and asking them to pick one because I really appreciate them working so hard. It's been a really busy couple of weeks and they have done a really good job. And we've actually had some people take vacations during that time. So running on a tight team, but still, everyone working the best that they can. So
I think it's important to look at those parameters, because being able to tell your team we saw all these people and we got this many Google reviews, again, adds to culture and adds to understanding and shows your appreciation for what they're doing.
And I think there's a direct correlation between positive Google reviews and net new customers.
Yes.
Especially with the environment we're in today. I mean, a lot of people, the first thing they do is go to Google, search for veterinary hospitals around their house, and then sort by, who's got the best reviews.
Absolutely.
So even though we're not actively marketing the business today, we're driving a lot of those new clients from positive Google reviews or, the Facebook, neighborhood groups, et cetera. So just having that presence and make sure we're monitoring that and understanding where we're at with it, I think is important for our growth as well.
So based on the question, like how do we measure profitability and also still pay people and make sure we, can pay ourselves? We are kind of in a sweet spot, we'll be honest, because we don't have to pay ourselves a lot out of this business right now at this time, because I still have a full-time emergency job, which I love, and you have other businesses and sources of income. And so we're really able to give back to the practice a lot. But if we did have to pay me, we would still be profitable, which has been great. And we are growing so much that we can continue to see more patients, and that will also help us grow overall.
Yeah, and there's certain just industry standards that we know kind of exist in the market. As an example, a veterinarian should probably make 20 to 22% of their gross revenues, right? So the revenue they drive for the practice, they should be getting paid somewhere between 20 and 22% in theory.
It's actually 25% if you're in emergency.
We're going to use some different ratios for our hospital. So with that being said, if you're the owner of the practice as a veterinarian, you should be able to drop 20 to 22% of your revenues down to it as a salary.
Right.
You should be able to pay yourself an administrative fee of probably 2% or so for you managing and hiring and firing and doing all that piece of it. And then your practice should still drop, 10% or so to the bottom line. This should be profitable dollars for the owner of the business. So just using basic understanding of where the funds should fall gives a lot of people an idea of what they should make as an owner for a practice. And then if you can use benchmarks and make sure that you're within range, and maybe to the better side of these ranges, then that's just going to make you a more profitable practice.
But the important thing is not just to feel profitable or feel like you're doing well. It's to actually look at it and then see, like, maybe you are doing well, but maybe you can decrease your cost of goods by buying a different way and you can actually increase your profitability. Or maybe because you're doing so well, you maybe aren't paying your team as much and you can increase your salaries.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at that several months ago that our revenue was going up at a certain rate. And when we look at our percentage of pay to our staff, we were at the lower end of that. And what that meant to us was we need to hire or increase pay.
Right.
What we decided to do is hire because we don't want to burn people out by overworking them, right? So when you look at staff ratios as a percent of your revenue, you have a good idea of what kind of staff you need. And we were ready to staff up so that as that revenue increases, we're making sure that we're not burning anybody out.
Well, and we, at that time, decided to hire, but we had already increased pay initially when we bought. And then as we've given people like extra duties or people have grown their skill set. So we still, based on the ability to hire, are actually paying well for the industry, which makes me really, really happy. But I do think the added benefits is going to be helpful moving forward. And then we're going to have to look at what are we spending on those benefits and how does that go into the pay structure that we have. But I'm excited about adding more of that because I just think this day and age, you have to get the cream of the crop, the really good veterinarians
I would agree.
Technical staff.
It's an expense you're going to have to swallow out of the gate. And a lot of time, I mean, when you paper it out, you may not be able to actually afford it for a while. But the hope would be that you do get better staff over time, and that staff is going to allow you to handle more revenue. So that's the overall hope.
Well, and that's our plan. We'll see how it works out, best laid plans. But so far, our team has continued to grow, and we've found some really exceptional people who I think enjoy each other and then also really enjoy what we're doing. And we have been busy, which is great. And we have not marketed at all. So probably need to do a podcast in the future with marketing ideas and things that you can do as a practice, because that's kind of the next step. And the great thing is bringing another vet on board is going to give me more of the freedom to do some of those things that I have to do and those ideas I have, which are really hard to do when you're the veterinarian of a practice. So for people who honestly own a practice by themselves as the vet, don't have, a husband who can help or can't afford to hire people that are help and skillful, I honestly don't know how they do it. And I can see why so many of them burn out and are not able to do it well, because it's really hard.
I would strongly encourage that owner to make sure they have a CPA or an advisor that would give them this data on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
So sit down and discuss what are some areas that we need to make sure that we're looking at, and not just getting that P&L or not just getting that balance sheet and just glancing at it without real knowledge of what they're looking at. So put that into some type of format around some benchmarks so you can see, where do I fall within the top 20% of the veterinary hospitals in the U.S.?
Right.
Am I doing well? Maybe I'm making money, maybe I'm just barely paying the bills, but what are some of the areas that you can really concentrate on, those levers that you can pull to increase profitability over time? And I think a lot of veterinarians, if they don't have that in a format where they can see it against benchmarks, I'm not real sure how they manage the practice, to be honest.
I agree, because I feel like there's actually days where I'm like, did we make money today? And then there's days where I'm like, we did awesome. And then when I actually look at the numbers, I'm like, whoa, like we saw a lot, but we didn't actually, make that much. And so if you just go off a gut and feeling in this industry, I really think that's where you can kind of go off in the wrong direction when you're making real business decisions that ultimately affect everyone that, relies on you to pay. So having people that are really knowledgeable and can really dig into the numbers more is really, really important. And there's even more subcategories you can really get into as your business grows and you get more data. We're only a year in.
Yeah.
And so we were looking at bigger overviews.
Ours are very basic at this
Yes.
point. I mean, what we're looking at is making sure there's no, low-hanging fruit that we can grab, out real quick, or any potential cancers that we need to take care of immediately.
Right.
Going into year 2, year 3, et cetera, these will start getting drilled in, especially around your lab fees.
Yes.
What you're paying in lab, that's a mystery for the most part. So some of those I think we're going to be able to dig into and really get a better understanding going forward.
But these are good kind of basic KPIs that everyone probably should be looking at least on a quarterly basis, if not a monthly basis, and really helping them make financial decisions to increase profitability in their practice. So,
and not to nerd out, which I can do on this stuff.
I was worried you might.
There's really no interface between your practice management software and your financial software, which we use EasyVet and we use QuickBooks. So you have to manually move that stuff over on a monthly, daily, however you want to do it basis. And there's certain what they call chart of accounts. I think AHA has a chart of accounts that they use as their standard. We bring over basically 2 categories into QuickBooks today. That's something we could very easily expand and be able to see much more real time into all these subcategories. Right now, we pull that out of our practice management system, but that's not loaded into our financial system.
Right.
So there's some things that we're going to do going forward that's going to help have more visibility. But out of the gate, it's, hey, let's get everything on paper so we understand what we're doing and then move forward from there.
It has certainly been an education for me, the business side of things, and just how to make these decisions and how to look at it in a way that makes sense. Because I definitely can see the emotional side of things sometimes when you're trying to make decisions, whether it's staffing or price changes or renovation cost. And when you can really look at the numbers and your goals, it makes a huge difference and it's helpful.
But I will say the emotional side of things is very important too. As an example, emotionally, we've got to put benefits in play to get the right staff. Right. On paper, that doesn't work.
Right.
Benefits on paper, when you start, papering it out, it's not a good sign. So sometimes the paper is going to help you to a certain extent, but at some point instinct has to kick in, right? And I think that's where we follow your gut with some stuff like, hey, this on paper doesn't make sense.
Right.
A renovation may not make sense.
Right.
But sometimes you have to go with your gut and then figure it out from there as well.
Well, I appreciate you trusting my gut in my vision. So far, it's served us well, and I appreciate your logical number crunching and spreadsheets. So we're a pretty good team.
I think so.
All right, so that is the basic overview of KPIs, key performance indicators. I have learned a lot. I continue to learn about all that. I appreciate all your knowledge you shared with us today. If you guys have any additional questions about any of that or want us to go more in depth on it, make sure to check us out at Questions with Crocker on TikTok, Instagram, all of them. Don't DM Shane. He'll never see it. And you also can listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Keep those reviews coming in. We really appreciate it. It is on YouTube. You can watch us if you prefer it that way. I listen to podcasts when I'm driving, so I never watch anything. But we appreciate y'all's support, and let us know if you have any future questions. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.